right.
Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome to the November 24th, 2025 City of Tualatin City Council meeting. I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and tonight's pledge will be led by Councilor Brooks. It's way over there. Keep moving.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. That brings us to public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for anyone to address the City Council regarding an item that is not on tonight's agenda. Please keep your comments to about 3 minutes. If there's anyone in the room who would like to address the council, I'll take those first. And then after that, I'll take those folks in Zoom. So I have no one signed up right now in the room. Do we have anyone who would like to provide public comment? Seeing none, do we have anybody in Zoom? No one in Zoom? All right. Go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda are items considered routine. They will be adopted by one motion unless someone on the council would like an item removed and heard separately later tonight. Tonight's consent agenda consists of item number 1, consideration of approval of the work session and regular meeting minutes of November 10th, 2025. Item number 2, consideration of resolution number 5927-25, approval of a land lease agreement with New Singular Wireless PCS LLC, AT&T, for wireless communications equipment at 8930 Southwest Norwood Road, Tualatin, Oregon. Item number 3 is consideration of resolution number 5929-25, authorizing the city manager to execute a facility use agreement with Horizon Community Church for temporary use of school property. And finally, item number 4 is consideration of resolution number 5932-25, authorizing change order number 2 for the in-pipe micro hydro turbine project. Would any councilor like an item removed from consent? All right, seeing none.
I move that we adopt the consent agenda as read. Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda as read. Any discussions on those motions? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It's unanimous. All right. That brings us to our special reports. We have one special report, the outside agency grant awardee, Family Promise. Elise, welcome.
All right, hi, Mayor Bubenik and Council. So glad to be able to be here today and share a little bit about what Family Promise is up to. It's the big arrow, yes? The big arrow? Yes. Okay. Fantastic. Doing a few things. I think most of you are fairly familiar with us and what we do. We've been looking at things with a slightly different lens, so I'm going to present some slightly different information as we start into this, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what our organization's been up to. We are looking at the scope of the situation. Now, we're stabilized in the size of our facility and the services that we're currently providing, and so we're looking at what would it look like to address the full scope of this issue. So this is slightly older data, but it's really talking about what is going on in Washington County. And so this is mostly using McKinney-Vento counts, but it's talking about 3,000 kids in Washington County experiencing homelessness. That doesn't count anyone who's below school age, and it doesn't count the adults in their lives. Most of them are in a doubled up situation, which of course does not meet the HUD criteria for homelessness, but it does meet the McKinney-Vento criteria. And then some are other places. So that's, almost 4% of kids in Washington County who are experiencing this level of housing instability. So that was kind of sobering. And when we did some kind of math on a napkin to include those preschoolers, babies, and parents, it came up to about 11,000 folks with kids who would be impacted by this issue. So it's not a small thing. Oh, no, I need to go back. Okay, so one of the main reasons is affordability of housing and the lack of affordable housing. So Tiger at about $38 an hour and $40 an hour is what's considered a housing wage. That would make a 2-bedroom apartment affordable. And that's just not doable for folks without sufficient education or background or training to be able to get jobs like that. That's often more than two folks working at a wage job can afford, or at a minimum wage job could afford, to be able to have that kind of housing. And it's about 75% of families who are making less than $75,000 a year are considered rent burdened. So that means, again, more than 30% of your income is spent on rent. And so really that remains one of the biggest challenges among families. Homelessness is a huge issue with a lot of causes and potential solutions. Family homelessness is always just a little bit different. Again, the majority of those folks are doubled up, and a lot of it has to do with these housing costs. So that's kind of just a lens that we've been looking at things recently and thinking about as we do our strategic planning, what that'll look like for us as an organization. So about us, most people know this, but for those of you who might not be as familiar, we are part of a national organization. We now have our 70-room non-congregate shelter in Tigard. And it's, we're mostly full most of the time. We go through Washington County for referrals. We have on-site everything that folks would need. We also have a number of case managers who are working out in the community, not street outreach specifically, but with folks who are already housed. And we do work with eviction prevention as well. Our remodel, if you haven't gotten to come out and see us, I would love to schedule a tour with anyone who wants one, but we had our beautiful commercial kitchen. This hotel didn't have that. We have a multi-purpose room now, our much needed but not sexy fire suppression system. We designed the lobby. Oh, I thought there was one other shelter picture in there. Well, that's all you get. Okay. But that is kind of the crown jewel of the remodel, is this gorgeous commercial kitchen. Our impact to date, I think that was maybe not updated for November numbers, but we've provided shelter for, for over 460 people, usually around half are kids. Now that our kitchen's up and running for at least half the year, we're cranking out 3 dinners a week served directly. The other 2 people can grab a boxed meal to go. We have our pantry and we have breakfast every day. We've helped 99 households. 99, really? We couldn't round up? Okay. Achieve housing and stay that way. And then, at the shelter, and we're expecting these shelter stay lengths to increase. It's about 4 months right now, so we do try to concentrate on what can we do with that time. So for the kiddos, it's, a lot of activities like our Cocoa Club, which is after school tutoring. We have holiday activities and school break activities. For adults, it can be financial literacy classes or signing up for healthcare. We bring a lot of things, as many as possible, on site. So we partner with NAMI. We bring Care Oregon on site. The Tigard Library comes on site. So it's just important to keep families engaged and have things going on. So there's always a lot of volunteer opportunities. You can see some there if you'd like. I'm sure this can go out afterwards, but if anyone has a group or individuals who would like to volunteer, we are up to 43 staff members now and would absolutely have to double that if we didn't have our volunteers. So what are the changes in the sector? I'm sure you all are pretty familiar with some of these things, but there are fewer eviction prevention dollars. Washington County did ask Metro, who agreed to allocate some of the money that was shorted from the state system to go to eviction prevention. But as an agency, we've been accustomed to working with a few $100,000 a year of eviction prevention money through EFSP, which is a FEMA program, Emergency Food and Shelter Program. That's who knows where. There's no updates. There's no news about that. So that's a resource that we've typically used that is just unavailable right now. Our shelter system is at capacity, our voucher system is close to capacity, and there's no affordable housing on the horizon. So that's not a great prospect. We are looking as an agency to kind of pivot how we do case management. We've been administering these vouchers, we've been administering these programs, and we're going to have to kind of go back to basics a little bit more. So you as our partners, what could you do for us? More agile short-term solutions funding. So eviction prevention dollars, shelter diversion. There's almost nothing for utility payments for folks, and that's one of the highest reasons for eviction for families is non-payment of utilities. Short-term hotel stays or flex funds just to meet people's needs individually. So those are kind of the ways we're looking to be more creative with our funding and case management. And as always, you can subscribe to our newsletter, follow us on Facebook, volunteer, all sorts of different things. So I wanted to leave a few minutes for questions. Does this next slide say questions? It does not. Okay.
Questions for Elise? Council Brooks.
Thank you for your dedication and all the work that you've done for our community. That is not a small number, and there's so many different ways that families are stressed in our region right now, and it's heartbreaking. And providing hope in the services that you have. I've said often, coming from where I came from, it's one of the most, it's the best program I've seen in the state since I've been here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm picky. My question for you is around, our community is very interested in housing, in eviction prevention. And so as city councilors, where or what, how can we best advocate for that money? I know that there was decisions at the state level. There's possible cuts at the metro level if they transfer services to housing. And then there's the county shortfalls and the federal shortfalls. So is there a place that you see flexibility where we could be best advocating on behalf of what our community really wants dollars to go to?
Thank you for that question. I mean, you're right. There's a little bit of a similarity in where housing services are now to where some of our clients are, as you can't, budget your way out of a hole. If there's just not enough money to cover everything, then there's literally no way you can, change things up. We, again, are hoping to use more case management on our end. A lot of times when folks go into housing with a voucher, if they haven't had a lot of experience being housed, there may be all sorts of barriers like technology, not knowing how to go on the landlord's portal and do a thing. There could be language barriers. There could be just lack of comfort in engaging with the system, so they don't know how to be an advocate or they don't know how to be a tenant. And so we're hoping to really lean more into the case management aspect and to keep people housed. So we're continuing to work with them on those issues to say, okay, you've gotten a notice from your landlord for having stuff on your balcony. Let's talk about this. Let's figure out why that's not okay. So I think that's one thing that's slightly more cost effective is funding these case management services. I do think that SHS is highly focused on this population A, which is folks who are experiencing chronic homelessness. And you don't want to see anyone unhoused. But there's also a point at which you can stop the cycle, and that's sort of before it starts. So for folks who never lose their housing, never have that eviction on their record, never have to get rid of all their possessions and then get them again, I think that's a key intervention point that's more cost effective. I mean, by orders of magnitude, it's more cost effective to keep someone housed than it is to have them sheltered and then rehoused.
I agree. Thank you. Is there any place that you see any flexibility or ways that we could be best advocates?
Advocating for that balance, again, there's been a political expediency to focusing on folks who are literally unhoused, and I don't say this without compassion because that is a terrible place to be. You don't want anyone to not have a roof over their head or a warm place to sleep. But it can create a pipeline of things down the line. And so in terms of advocacy with electeds or as you're having conversations in the community, there's a lot of folks, in particular families, who you don't see on the streets. And there's a chance to have that generational impact by making sure that their kids are not unhoused. That's another statistic I didn't have in our presentation, but age 0 to 3 is the age in the U.S. that someone is most likely to experience homelessness. And the most likely factor of becoming homeless as an adult is having been as a child. And so this is an opportunity as you're doing advocacy work or having conversations to have that generational shift or to have that awareness. And then flexibility, I mean, again, there's short-term solutions too, so that families don't end up in shelter. There's eviction prevention keeps someone housed. Shelter diversion has that gap. So if someone can stay in a hotel for a little while and then go into new housing, that's another more short-term, more cost-effective intervention.
Thank you very much. And just that one piece around 0 to 3, it's such a trauma site, and the trauma when the child's brain's still developing means it's complex trauma. Yeah. And if we have generations of this, that also is a barrier to being able to follow, instructions or be able to read through something on a computer. It's very difficult to concentrate oftentimes. So I really appreciate the case management work that you do. Thank you.
Other questions for Elise? President Pratt.
Hi. I don't want you to give specific statistics because you didn't bring it, but the people after their 4 months, can you explain the process of do you get them housed in apartments typically? And then how likely is it they'll stay housed long-term?
So 4 months is an average stay. But once someone goes into housing, a lot of our success has been due to this SHS, our Le Voucher system. Right. And with that comes case management that follows them for 2 years to 4 years. And so there's a percentage, and I don't have those stats, as you mentioned, about how many folks don't necessarily, it doesn't stick the first time, but that case manager goes with them and then can help them find another place or help them transition back into shelter. It's really not, depending on the number of barriers, the amount of time someone's experienced homelessness, their whole background and history, it's not always a straight line to housing. So sometimes it takes a couple runs at it.
And that's why those services, support services, are
yes.
so important.
Yes.
And then I watched this documentary, and it wasn't in Portland, but it was about another city where these people get in this trap of extended stay hotels, and it's really expensive, and they basically work just to pay their daily rent. And is that a big issue? And is that an issue in Portland?
I know for families that's sometimes a place that they'll stay instead of doubled up. Oftentimes people don't have someone they can stay with. If everyone is kind of in your socioeconomic circle, then there's not like, oh, I have a few spare bedrooms, or you can move into my basement or attic or whatever. So families will, to avoid the streets, stay in hotels, and then that does eat up money. You're not able to save money. You're not able to kind of get ahead in that model.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for all the work you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you for your support.
Other questions for Elise? Right. I just want to thank you, Elise, for everything you're doing. Big support of your organization.
Yes.
Myself personally and the 12th City Council. So this time of year, I know there's the giving guide. Can you talk about that and your
for sure.
campaign to raise money?
Yes. So we've been part of the Willamette Week Give Guide for a few years now. It's a great cohort of nonprofits, and they have that kind of platform that helps us amplify our message. One of the other cool things is that there are all these big give days, and so if you give even $10 on that day and you can spread it across nonprofits, you're entered to win really cool local things, trips, Powell's gift certificates, all that fun stuff. So that's just a neat way to kind of package end of year giving. But we're hoping to raise, I think we said on the thing, $30,000 or $35,000. On Giving Tuesday, we'll have a match of $5,000, I believe. We have a generous donor who'll match all gifts up to $5,000 on Giving Tuesday. So while I know the city can't do anything necessarily officially, if you want to amplify our message on your own social media, we're on Facebook, you can repost, or Instagram. And that's just so valuable for us, even though so much of our funding is from SHS. It's the unrestricted funding that allows us to have that flexibility to say there aren't limits to what we can do. If someone needs, transportation, we can help with that, because then they get to keep their job and they get to have that stability. And so that's really where the flexibility is critical. So,
Where do you find that?
Where do you find that? You can go to our website, familypromiseoftv.org/donate, or if you just Google us and Give Guide, you'll find our Give Guide page.
Okay. And it's on Willamette Week's website too?
Yes, they have everybody on there as well.
Yep, all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, thank you for that. Reminding me to have that little plug. Absolutely, yes.
All right.
Appreciate
Anything
that.
else for Elise? Well, thank you for coming tonight. Okay, Councilor Brooks.
I was thinking through what you said about the utility bills. And we have, through the city, utility bill forgiveness program. There's more information on our website, but just FYI, so that you guys know yeah.
Yeah, I'll make sure that our
We're
case
proud of
managers
that.
are aware of that. Yeah, that is just one of those challenges. And of course, through case management, they make sure folks are have access to that discounted rates, the things that are available for folks who are low income. Some of these programs aren't perfectly designed, let's put it that way. And so they're putting someone into housing who might not have income. And that means that while their housing is paid for, they don't necessarily have the ability to pay their utilities. So that's been a bit of an ongoing challenge. So, yeah, thank you.
All right.
I appreciate all of your time today.
All right. Have a happy Thanksgiving. All right. So that brings us to public hearings. We have a public hearing tonight for ordinance 1454-25. This is a public hearing for the City Council to consider ordinance number 1454-25, amending the Tualatin Comprehensive Plan and Tualatin Development Code, Plan Text Amendment 25-0002. The hearing will be conducted as follows. First, the public hearing will be opened and city staff will make a presentation. Next, the council will hear from members of the public who wish to testify in favor of the ordinance, followed by members of the public who wish to testify against the ordinance, followed by anyone else who wishes to testify. Upon conclusion of the public testimony, individual councilors may ask questions of city staff and any person who provided testimony. After council questions, the council will close the public portion of the hearing to consider the resolution. Upon conclusion of deliberations, the council will consider whether or not to adopt Resolution 1454-25. Got a series of questions here. Does any member of council wish to abstain from participating in this hearing tonight? All right. Seeing none, I will go ahead and open this public hearing, and we'll begin with a presentation from Aaron and Aquila. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and I am going to turn it over to Aaron, who is fully steeped in climate-friendly and equitable communities.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors, for joining us tonight. I am Erin Ingman. I'm the senior planner at the City of Tualatin, and as we mentioned, we're going to be discussing PTA 25-0002, which is the CFAC Walkable Design Standards. So for tonight's agenda, we'll start with a recap of the background and summary of what CFAC is. We'll review the code concepts, which you've seen a few times before, and I'll share what amendments are included in this packet before you tonight. We'll also cover our public engagement and the public comments that have been received thus far, our approval criteria, our Planning Commission recommendation, and then at the end of my presentation, we'll have some time for questions before you deliberate. So as a reminder, CFAC stands for Climate-Friendly and Equitable Communities, and it's a state mandate to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from transportation. There are multiple components to CFAC, a few that we've already addressed. But for tonight, the walkable design standards are tied to the transportation planning rule, which makes sense because it kind of has to do with making our communities more walkable. And that was also tied to our transportation system plan update. And since our TPS project was further along than this project, we had asked DLCD for an extension to bring this amendment to you later than our TSP update. So those approval letters are in your packet materials. So if you're curious, you can reference those. And our project tonight addresses Oregon Administrative Rules. 660 Division 12, and it's subsection 0330, also known as Rule 0330. So their purpose is to promote walkable and bike-friendly design in new residential and commercial development. So we'll put a stress on that this is for new development throughout the city by promoting pedestrian-oriented site design, connectivity, and compact development. And to implement this rule, there are 4 main components which we've addressed in our work session conversations, and that's neighborhood connectivity, commercial and mixed-use districts, residential neighborhoods, auto-oriented uses. And this project looked to a guidebook and model code that DLCD released as part of this project. So that's been included in your packet materials, and some of our language was pulled from that model code. We also considered input from our city council, so thank you, and our community stakeholders. So addressing our first key topic, neighborhood connectivity, this will be a recap of things you've already heard, but it does apply to land divisions and the creation of new streets. It requires that we have a connected network of streets, paths, and access ways so that pedestrians and cyclists can move within a neighborhood and to adjacent districts. So we're kind of trying to look to get away from cul-de-sacs or connections that may not be as direct. It also sets maximum block length standards and block perimeter standards at distances that are conducive to pedestrians. And for our code amendments, we chose to limit those to our local street connections. So in our code amendments, we propose reducing our maximum block length standard from 530 feet to 400 feet, which is approximately 2 City of Portland blocks. And then our perimeter standard would be 4 times that amount, so 1,600 feet. And where a cul-de-sac is proposed, we ask that the developer provide a pedestrian and bicycle connection when there's a public sidewalk nearby. And the visual in the upper right illustrates that point that we're looking to address. In our code amendments, we also include design standards for public alleys and private streets. That's pretty exciting. We didn't have those standards before. And the point of that was just to incorporate some flexibility for residential development to provide driveway access from alleyways. And that kind of preserves our street frontage for on-street parking. That way you don't have the curb cuts for driveways. We also expanded our mid-block accessway standards for pedestrian comfort and safety. So we have limitations on how long those can be. We also include things like width, requirements, compliance with ADA standards, and we have built in some lighting standards as well. And then moving on to the next key concept, it applies to commercial and mixed-use districts, and it's meant to provide compact development patterns that are easy to walk, easy to use mobility devices with direct access for pedestrians, bicyclists, and to connect to transit amenities. And what that means is that buildings are to be oriented to the street with the primary entrances located to the street and the public sidewalk. There are allowances for a secondary entrance to face onto the parking lot since we are in a suburb, and we'll have those features as well. And then we also require pedestrian connections between sidewalks, building entrances, parking, and adjacent properties. So how we address this in our code amendments, when looking at our audit, we found that our mixed-use commercial zone largely applied with these standards in the rulemaking. So we took some of those concepts and then applied those to our other commercial zones. So you'll see that we've amended our neighborhood commercial zone and our central commercial chapters to require a maximum front yard setback. We also lessen the minimum front yard setback. And what that does is it gives more of a presence of the building towards the street. So another thing that we've added to kind of play with that is that buildings must be located at a certain percentage along that street frontage, and that parking must be located to the side or the rear of the building. see, did I skip ahead? Sorry, I'm kind of. Okay. Sorry about that. So moving on to our third key concept, it applies to residential neighborhoods. And again, this is for new construction. The regulations are intended to encourage slow neighborhood streets and efficient and sociable development patterns. The model code guidance recommended that we revisit some local regulations, including setback, lot size and coverage, building orientation and access. With this project, we focused on setback and access. We figured we have low density standards as it is, so it didn't really make sense to look at lot size and coverage at this time. So we might hold that off until we have a larger project focused on that, as recommended by our housing production strategy. So in our code amendments, we reduced front setback requirements for all multifamily development in residential zones. We also added a maximum front yard setback to our high-density residential and our high-density residential high-rise zones. We added a requirement that for multifamily housing with frontage on a street that's classified as a local, that they have at least one entrance that faces onto the street. We figured having quieter streets, it would be more comfortable for that access way. And this is becoming more common in urban development where ground floors have direct access to the street. We also clarified walkway standards for single-family dwellings in middle housing. Previously, we didn't really have a walkway standard for single-family dwellings. With our amendments, we do clarify that, and we also add some flexibility where the driveway could satisfy that requirement. We also did limit driveway widths for single-family dwellings in middle housing as part of this amendment bundle. And then moving on to our last key concept, which is auto-oriented uses. You may recall our last work session in September. But obviously for drive-through uses and auto-oriented uses, they're designed so that you can complete your service trip without getting out of your car, and that creates some tension when maybe the use includes a lobby that might be open to pedestrians. So these rules are trying to kind of bridge that gap. So under our code amendments to address these rules, we now require a walk-up service window for new drive-through uses. A direct connection to the lobby could satisfy this requirement. And then we also include an image in the upper right to kind of clarify what this use would be. We require driveway access to be provided off of the lower classification for these uses, and then they must be set back at a certain distance from intersections just to accommodate that traffic demand and queue capacity. Thanks to your direction, we have prohibited drive-through uses in all of our pedestrian-oriented zones. Our existing code did not allow those uses in our central commercial. And then under your guidance, we eliminated that use in our mixed-use commercial zone. And lastly, the amendments require an elevation change or a use of different material when a walkway crosses a vehicular area. And that's demonstrated in the lower picture. So on the next couple of slides, we'll just look at what chapters have been amended as part of this ordinance. I won't read through all of these, but it was a fairly limited project. If we touched a chapter and we noticed a typo, we corrected those typos. So I think that's kind of been the only reach outside of this project. And then you'll see a few other chapters where we made some proposed amendments. And as far as our engagement process, while it is a project that responds to a state mandate, we did work with the LCD, got a grant, and secured a partnership with MIG. So using our consultant MIG, they did some early stakeholder engagement. So that happened last year and early of this year. Those findings were included in your packet materials. We also had the 3 council work sessions where we got your general acceptance and policy direction, which has been included in this ordinance. We also had a project web page dedicated to this project, and it included an informational flyer that you can see on the slide. And we also satisfied our public noticing requirements, and that information is included in your packet as well. So under our Planning Commission packet, some public comments started rolling in. Largely, it was from the Save Tualatin Road folks. They had some comments directed to our amendments related to the driveway approach permit procedures, and we'll review these amendments on the following slide. But largely, I think that they were just concerned that we were making changes that would make changes to our commercial and industrial driveways a little easier. But once we clarified that this is a very limited scope and that driveway approaches are limited to the public right-of-way, we're not doing anything that would make projects that have a significant impact onto our transportation system easier to achieve. We also got one comment that was directed to our reduced front yard setbacks in the residential medium to low density zone. This person was concerned that having those reduced setbacks would impact the neighborhood character. But once we worked through the details and highlighted that it's only limited to the multifamily development, it really has a de minimis impact on the neighborhood character, since we don't really see a lot of multifamily development in those zones. And those zones are largely built out. So kind of to look at the code amendments that were being scrutinized, for our driveway approach permits, we did add some provisions for a type 1 review, but those are extremely limited. So you'll see that under a type 1 review, we have expanded it for residential projects that take access off of a local street, and they are required to meet our driveway standards in the code. So it's kind of a clear and objective type 1 process for residential driveways. We also included existing driveways that are simply just going to be maintained and reconstructed. So they're not being expanded, they're not new driveways. Those would be reviewed as a type 1 review. All other impacts would be type 2, as we currently have in our code. And then just to kind of preview what we did with our RML setbacks, as you can see, it only applies to multifamily and conditional uses. So very limited reach. Staff did include an analysis and findings to address the approval criteria before you. So we had to address state rules, the Metro Code, and our local code. And we found that this project complies with all. And then when we took this project to our Planning Commission, they had a unanimous recommendation to release the amendments for public review. They had a few caveats, and one was that members of the 2 focus groups be included in the notification of the public hearing, which staff satisfied. That evidence is in your packet materials. And then the second caveat was that in our previous amendment bundle, staff had proposed some changes outside of the scope that applied to the residential high-density, high-rise district, and that we wanted to propose a name change and some amendments to the purpose statement of that zone. I think recently we've heard that the title of that zone is misleading. People are afraid of the high-rise designation, even though you're not necessarily going to see a high-rise development out of it. But the Planning Commission thought that that might be a more appropriate project that is more focused on that chapter and not as part of this walkable design standard bundle before you tonight. And I think that kind of encapsulates everything I wanted to cover on this slide. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation and open up for questions of council.
Got to do testimony first, and then we'll do questions.
Thank you.
So are there any members of the public who wish to testify in favor of this proposal? I'm not seeing any here. Anybody in Zoom? Okay. Are there any members of the public who wish to testify against this proposal? Not seeing anyone in here, no one in Zoom, all right. Is there any member of the public that just wants to testify? Seeing none here, none in Zoom, all right. Does any member of the council have questions for staff? Councilor Brooks.
Thank you for all of your work and the very complete and good presentation and work behind it. My only question is, with the smaller size of the blocks, one of the concerns that I have when I'm downtown is they allow cars to park right up to the corners because there's less space to park, parallel park. And a lot of times there's blind corners that are not safe for bicyclists and pedestrians. So I'm curious if we have thought about that yet.
Let me pull up the amendment language. If I recall correctly, it's limited to streets classified as a local, which would largely be limited to our residential zones and wouldn't apply to our downtown zone. But let me just make sure that I got that accurately for you.
Okay. And I'm glad to hear about the alleys because I think that helps a lot. I've seen that in other developments in other communities, and it works very nicely.
Yeah, so the block length standard is limited to streets with a local classification, so it would not apply to our downtown zone.
Okay. I guess I'm also just curious what the cushion is between the corner and the car as it moves forward.
Could you maybe frame your question a different way? I don't think I understood.
If there were people parking on the street, how far up to the corner can they go?
So I think we have vision clearance triangles, if I'm saying that correctly, that we'd be looking at in terms of how close they could get to the corner there.
Right.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting just because it changes the counts of the cars and just to see, but I think it's really important. Thanks.
Yeah, so our vision clearance requirements aren't, we're not proposing any changes to our existing ones. And I believe for higher classification streets, the setback, I want to say is 30 or 20 feet back. So it would feel greater than what it feels like in Portland.
Great. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Councilor Reyes.
This is gonna sound like a dumb question, but, or like another explanation. The photo where you had, the McDonald's and the person walking, can you elaborate a little bit on what's happening there or what's going on there?
Yeah, so the state rules have to do with some of the tension created with drive-through uses. And what I was trying to highlight with that image is that in some instances, when someone doesn't have access to a car or may not be old enough to drive a car, but they still want to utilize those facilities, in some cases, people may walk through the drive-through when lobbies aren't open. I know in some cases, lobbies close for security reasons and things like that. So I think the rules are trying to make it so either the lobbies need to remain open and there needs to be a safe pedestrian access way to that lobby, or if the lobby is closed, that there's a walk-up window that's separate from the drive-through window.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It was almost different in my head, like thinking that we were adding something like that. I was like, what? Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Councilor Hilliard.
Thank you very much. Will you go back on page 10? And I just want to be sure that I am understanding. So a clarification, Liz, you said that you were going to that we would hold off on making a consideration once we had a bigger grouping of something. Was that more applications for the residential? Or, sorry, I didn't mean to. I'm just not sure I understood what you meant, and if you would clarify that, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
So is this the right slide relating to? Yeah. So what I was trying to state is that the state guidelines and model code recommend that local jurisdictions look at these 4 items. And then with our code audit, we discovered that we have fairly low density standards. And because of that, it didn't really make a lot of sense to look at our lot size and our lot coverage standards. So we decided to maybe table that. And then if we were to explore amendments to our density, then it would make sense to look at those 3 items comprehensively under a separate project. So that's what I was trying to explain.
Thank you for your clarification.
Yeah.
I, of course, am thinking about an application that may or may not already be in a neighborhood is my neighborhood, and I'm questioning that because are the codes, and I know this change won't happen today, but I'm trying to understand if there can be some sort of amendment, should there be? And so I guess that's why I'm asking the question. I mean, does it affect applications that we have out right now? If we were
I see what you're
or
saying.
applications that have come in right now that would affect lot size, coverage, building orientation, and access?
No, right, if we have an application right now, the code that's in place will be in effect. Sorry. Thank you
I'm
for
sorry, I was
clarifying your
roundabout. I was
question.
trying to
No,
not be direct, and that was never good, so I
It's a hot
apologize.
topic right
Yes, it is. The rats are a hot topic, I will say, yes.
Other questions? Council President Pratt?
I'm trying to understand this, so bear with me. But on the commercial, when you were talking about the parking being on the side or behind a building, and I'm going to use a specific example, that lot on Boone's Ferry and Tualatin Road that's pretty much empty. If they develop that, would the commercial development have to have front doors facing Tualatin, Sherwood, and Boone's Ferry, and parking behind it? And I guess my concern would be if you have, I guess I'll use like a Floor and Decor or a store where you have heavy stuff you have to pull out and get to your car, wouldn't that make it rather inconvenient?
So yes to your first point
Okay.
about the siding standards. And I think one point I'd like to make is that I think that largely relates to what we've heard from the Downtown Visioning Project too, that the report found that right now our downtown is hard to place because it doesn't look like a downtown. So I think the standard will help encourage when development occurs for our downtown to look more like a downtown. To your second point, I think largely that would, like the market and what the market can accommodate would probably work itself out.
Okay.
And if I recall correctly too, that block's fairly small, so I think it may be challenging
Yeah,
for
I
like
mean,
a,
what we have left, I could see where
Yeah.
that makes sense. I just kind of, in my head, think we, like where Hagen's are added or something, if they flattened that and redeveloped it, it would look so different.
and it's a
and
good
they-
point.
Yeah, okay. But, and thank you for all your work on this. I know it's a lot.
Other questions? All right, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close this public hearing, and we can start deliberations. Or a motion,
We have to do the readings.
first and second.
Okay. I motion that we have a first reading of ordinance number 1454-25 by title only.
Second.
I have a motion at 2 seconds for reading of ordinance 1454-25 by title only. Counselor Sacco,
Aye.
Counselor Hillier,
Aye.
Counselor Reyes.
Yes.
Counselor Gonzalez,
Yes.
Counselor Brooks,
Aye.
Council President Pratt.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, it's unanimous.
Ordinance number 1454-25, an ordinance related to land use, amending the Tualatin Comprehensive Plan and Tualatin Development Code, PTA 25-0002.
I motion that we have a second reading of ordinance number 1454-25 by title only.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for second reading of ordinance 1454-25 by title only. Counselor Sacco.
Aye.
Counselor Hillier.
Aye.
Counselor Reyes.
Yes.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Yes.
Counselor Brooks.
Aye.
Council President Pratt.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, it's unanimous.
Ordinance number 1454-25, an ordinance related to land use, amending the Tualatin Comprehensive Plan and Tualatin Development Code, PTA 25-0002.
I motion that we adopt ordinance 1454-25.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 1454-25. Any discussion on those motions? Counselor Sacco.
Aye.
Counselor Hillier.
Aye.
Counselor Reyes.
Yes.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Yes.
Counselor Brooks.
Aye.
Council President Pratt.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, it's unanimous. Ordinance 1454-25 is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't use, I'm going to save the hammer for my last year.
Oh.
All right. We had no items removed from consent. That brings us to council communications. We have any council communications? I have one item, but you know what it is. All right, my one item for council communications tonight. Oh, Councilor Brooks.
I just wanted to share, this was troubling to me, so I was on my way back from the hospital and went to check out the new park at Las Casitas, which was so exciting. And at the same time, there was a police call that was being followed up on where one of the construction people had filmed an incident where the community thought somebody was being kidnapped, and they were hit on the head with the butt of a gun. And later it was, found out that was ice. And it was such a struggle for me because it was so exciting to see this new park. It was the quietest I've ever seen that neighborhood. And people were terrified, and none of the kids are out there using that park that day anyway. And I just know that our police officers, I can't imagine doing that. So I just want the council to understand that, and I know there's other things going on, but it was such a conflicted moment, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it.
Other communication. Well, that ties into this a little bit. So I emailed you, so the public knows what I'm talking about here. On Tuesday, December 9th, from 6 to 9 p.m., Central Cultural, PERC, and the ACLU will host a regional day of impact training in Beaverton at the Reeser. The city of Beaverton is offering to live stream it to Washington County cities so that people throughout the region here in Washington County can be better trained on what's going on, what the situation is, and how to deal with it. The training will include authoritarianism 101, knowing your rights, MigraWatch legal observer training, and a Q&A and follow-up resources available to participants. The ask from the city of Beaverton is that we host an event here locally. The ACLU and Central Cultural will manage all the registrations. Once we say yes, we're on board, we'll work with the city of Beaverton, the ACLU, and Central Cultural to get that URL link where individuals can register for the event and find out where it is. The organizers are expecting high community interest and that the training will activate our collective strength in a moment when many of our neighbors are feeling fear and uncertainty, as Councilor Brooks was saying. So my ask tonight is that I've cleared it with the city manager that we do have the staff capacity, we do have a space, and our IT folks can work with the city of Beaverton on the joint live stream event. So I'm all for it. I'm just looking for 3 more hands that support that we do this. You got it. All right. So Don, I'll work with you and we'll work with the city of Beaverton on logistics. And I sent you the email with the beginning of the documents, but I'm anticipating more.
Okay, yeah, we'll get with them.
Yeah, go ahead. Councilor Reyes.
I appreciate this, Mayor, and I do want to encourage the community to write not just to their local representatives, but this is a federal matter, and I would love to see our federal or House representatives that go to Washington, that we, like Representative Bynum, I think her last name is, Salinas, Bonamici, to think of beyond a local streaming and educating our community about immigration, but to at least start something at a national level, because that's really where the impact is. And I'm really happy that people are going to get educated. I think that it's very important that information is out there for everyone. But immigration is a really difficult topic. But we do have representatives that are talking on our behalf in Washington, D.C., and I hope that they listen to do something about this, because it's just going to keep going. It's going to get harder. But I do encourage the community, the people that are organizing, that they also our representatives need to speak up on a national level. Otherwise, it's just going to continue the same way it is. And I just hope I'm going to also send a letter to our representatives that they need to start proposing resolutions for immigration, or how we're going to do this, because we continue to do this over and over. And we, as a local community, can only do so much. But this is a national issue that they need to put this under front of their agenda whenever they run for office again on this coming year. Otherwise, the fear will continue. And I'm going to be honest, I've been hearing that my community gets hope on, oh yeah, there's hope. And then all of a sudden, we elect people and they just don't do anything. And that, to me, is just playing with us. And I cannot see this anymore. And I'm just going to encourage our representatives that can do something to do something. Thank you.
That's a perfect, thank you very much, because I did send emails to Senator Wyden's staff, Senator Merkley's staff, and Congresswoman Salinas, letting them know that we might be hosting this event. So I'll follow up with them, tell them that we are, and ideally, maybe some of their staff people will show up and people can talk to them. All right, so with that, I think.
Mayor, I had something to say as well.
Okay, Councilor Gonzalez.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the information and willingness to share. I also want to be very careful to echo Councilor Reyes' message that immigration is very difficult, that we got to be very careful not to give people false hope, okay? As much as it's hard to say that, there is currently no immigration policy in place at all, like the amnesty of 1986. We have 86, correct. There is no amnesty policy like that gives people blanket opportunities. There's asylum, there's very specific, complicated process, so we just got to be very careful. Though we as a city could put this information up, but again, we don't want to give people false hope that because we're doing this, they can come here and we're going to protect them. It's very, very hard. It's very sad, but we got to be careful. Each time we talk about these things as city officials, people think that we can do something about it, and we cannot.
Right.
So we just got to be very careful.
Because part of the training, Councilor Gonzalez, like you're mentioning, is what cities can and can't do, so people know, and that's a very good point. All right. So with that, I'll go ahead and close the city council meeting.
I move to adjourn, yeah?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she's got to close, and okay. She did. Okay. I have a motion second to close the city council meeting for this evening. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Now we'll change our hats.